For thousands of years, walking has been the simplest means to get from point A to point B. However, as cities become larger with the expanding suburbs, cars have become our main method of transportation, making cities more vehicle-focused in their layouts. As more cars enter and exit the city, streets become wider to provide room for the increase in traffic flow, effectively pushing pedestrians aside, as sidewalks are either made smaller or eliminated altogether. This presentation will highlight the problems pedestrians face while walking in the city, what makes a city walkable, why walking is more efficient and sustainable, what councils are doing to make cities more pedestrian friendly, and to promote walking.
Cities are the crucible of civilization. They have been expanding. Urbanization has been expanding at an exponential rate in the last 200 years, so that by the second part of this century, the planet will be completely dominated by cities. Cities are the origins of global warming, impact on the environment, health, pollution, disease, finance, economies, energy, are all problems that are confronted by having cities. That's where all these problems come from. And the tsunami of problems that we feel we're facing in terms of sustainability questions are actually a reflection of the exponential increase in urbanization across the planet. Here's some numbers. 200 years ago, the United States was less than a few percent urbanized. It's now more than 82%. The planet has crossed the halfway mark a few years ago. China's building 300 new cities in the next 20 years. Now listen to this. Every week for the foreseeable future, until 2050, every week more than 1 million people are being added to our cities.
A city with less cars could be cleaner, less polluted, and economically fruitful. Being able to walk to your daily destinations creates a better and safer environment for everyone. Not only is a walkable city better for the environment, but also has greater health benefits.
And I want to talk to you today not about design, but about America, and how America can be more economically resilient, how America can be healthier, and how America can be more environmentally sustainable. And I realize this is a global forum, but I think I need to talk about America because there is a history, in some places, not all, of American ideas being appropriated, being emulated, for better or for worse, around the world. And the worst idea we've ever had is suburban sprawl. It's being emulated in many places as we speak. By suburban sprawl, I refer to the reorganization of the landscape and the creation of the landscape around the requirement of automobile use. That the automobile that was once an instrument of freedom has become a gas-belching, time-wasting, and life-threatening prosthetic device that many of us need most Americans, in fact, need just to live their daily lives. And there's an alternative. We say half the world is living in cities. Well, in America, that living in cities, for many of them, they're living in cities still where they're dependent on that automobile. And what I work for and to do is to make our cities more walkable. But I can't give design arguments for that will have as much impact as the arguments that I've learned from the economists, the epidemiologists, and the environmentalists. So these are the 3 arguments I'm going to give you quickly today. When I was growing up in the 70s, the typical American spent 1/10 of their income, American family, on transportation. Since then, we've doubled the number of roads in America, and we now spend 1/5 of our income on transportation. Working families, which are defined as earning between $20,000 and $50,000 a year in America, are spending more now on transportation than on housing, slightly more, because of this phenomenon called drive till you qualify, finding homes further and further and further from the city centers and from their jobs, so that they're locked in this 2, 3 hours, 4 hours a day of commuting. And these are the neighborhoods, for example, in the Central Valley of California, that weren't hurt when the housing bubble burst and when the price of gas went up. They were decimated. And in fact, these are many of the half-vacant communities that you see today. Imagine putting everything you have into your mortgage, it goes underwater, and you have to pay twice as much for all the driving that you're doing. So we know what it's done to our society and all the extra work we have to do to support our cars. What happens when a city decides it's going to set other priorities? And probably the best example we have here in America is Portland, Oregon. Portland made a bunch of decisions in the 1970s that began to distinguish it from almost every other American city. While most other cities were growing an undifferentiated spare tire of sprawl, they instituted an urban growth boundary. While most cities were reaming out their roads, removing parallel parking and trees in order to flow more traffic, they instituted a skinny streets program. And while most cities were investing in more roads and more highways, they actually invested in bicycling and in walking. And they spent $60 million on bike facilities, which seems like a lot of money, but it was spent over about 30 years, so $2 million a year. Not that much, and half the price of the one cloverleaf that they decided to rebuild in that city. These changes and others like them changed the way that Portlanders live, and their vehicle miles traveled per day, the amount that each person drives, actually peaked in 1996, has been dropping ever since, and they now drive 20% less than the rest of the country. The typical Portland citizen drives 4 miles less and 11 minutes less per day than they did before. The economist Joe Courtwright did the math, and he found out that those 4 miles plus those 11 minutes adds up to fully 3.5% of all income earned in the region. So if they're not spending that money on driving, and by the way, 85% of the money we spend on driving leaves the local economy. If they're not spending that money on driving, what are they spending it on? Well, Portland is reputed to have the most roof racks per capita, the most independent bookstores per capita, the most strip clubs per capita. These are all exaggerations, slight exaggerations of a fundamental truth, which is Portlanders spend a lot more on recreation of all kinds than the rest of America. Actually, Oregonians spend more on alcohol than most other states, which may be a good thing or a bad thing, but it makes you glad they're driving less. Now, but actually they're spending most of it in their homes. And home investment is about as local an investment as you can get. But there's a whole other Portland story which isn't part of this calculus, which is that young, educated people have been moving to Portland in droves. So that between the last 2 censuses, they had a 50% increase in college-educated millennials, which was 5 times what you saw anywhere else in the country, or I should say, of the national average.
The layout of our cities in North America have been designed around the use of cars instead of the oldest form of transportation, walking. Creating neighborhoods where one can live, work, shop, go to school, and run errands within walking distance is crucial.
Our nation decided to develop an interstate road infrastructure and to develop our communities to accommodate automobiles for economic growth.
Since World War II, we really started designing our communities. Whether big cities or small town America, we really shifted entirely toward the automobile. The car would bring freedom, and we built roadways for that, we did our zoning for that, we segregated uses.
We've kind of clustered our housing in one section of society, and then we put our schools a few miles away. Then we took our employment centers and put them a few miles further away. And then if you want to go shopping, go 8 miles up the road in order to hit the mall that has maybe 300 stores. They're all together and not near any housing or office buildings.
We ended up with a design that really precluded any kind of routine daily physical activity. People just didn't even walk to the corner store anymore.
We need to take a big picture view of this, and if we had urban design and built environment that was much more conducive to walking and regular physical activity, it would have enormous benefits in reducing the burden of chronic disease in this country, reducing healthcare costs, and improving the overall well-being of our society.
I've often said that it takes a healthy community to produce a healthy population.
So a lot of us are starting to ask the question, what would it take to build a place where we were more active? Can we do it? And the short answer is, yes, we can. We know what it takes, and there are communities all over the country actually making a very conscious effort to get there.
The goal, of course, is to now re-engineer physical activity into our daily lives because we've engineered it out of our lives.
the one key ingredient is to start building and allowing more mixed-use neighborhoods. A lot of zoning codes haven't done that. What was really crucial is giving people destinations within that quarter-mile or half-mile or even a mile radius of where they live. So you can do grocery shopping, you can drop off your dry clean, you can go to the hardware store.
Our organization believes that the walkability factor of a neighborhood is the strongest indicator of the quality of life in that neighborhood.
We need to build our communities so it's more conducive to walking and biking. We need to site our schools so that our kids can walk or bike to school again, like most of us did growing up.
I would love to have the United States as a country where people were much more physically active as a result of living in connected communities.
For me, the ideal would be that for all those trips that are short distances, maybe a mile or less, that we don't automatically get in the car, that our first thought is, oh, I'm going to walk down to the store.
If we could just make it where walking is the easiest option, where it's easier for me to just walk over for lunch than get in a car and drive, that's where we're going to see big changes.
When walking in the city, pedestrians face many issues that are exacerbated by increased population density. To understand these issues, it is important to look at what makes a city walkable. Putting money to revitalize downtowns, with interesting shops, making streets skinnier, and providing essentials like grocery and drugstores within walking distance all contribute to a more walkable city. Many city layouts have strayed from the idea of walkability and instead cater to vehicles which people have become increasingly dependent on. The following videos will highlight why cities that promote walking are healthier, safer, and more sustainable for individuals as well as the environment.
The path system in downtown Toronto is an underground walkway catered to pedestrians for their ease and comfort. It is weatherproof and convenient as it connects to every major point in the downtown core. This system provides more space for pedestrians to travel within in comparison to the above-ground sidewalks. It is a major advantage for people who travel around the city by walking to various locations. Most of the connections are between the Air Canada Centre to the Eden Centre. Other key points are also Union Station, Toronto Dominion Centre, the Hudson's Bay Company, and Toronto City Hall. The system even goes as far as west as the CN Tower and the Rogers Centre. As Ryerson students, we also have access to the path. This system has created a much safer space for pedestrians traveling in the busiest part of one of the largest cities in Canada.
But hidden below the streets and skyscrapers of Toronto is a marvel of subterranean engineering that lets people here escape the weather. Under the city's skin lies a parallel world. It's called Path. 17 miles of walkways, shopping malls, and subway stations carved into the soft ground under the city.
It is important that city governments understand the benefits of having a walkable city that not only profit the individuals in the city, but the city itself. By building infrastructure that people have a desire to explore and discover, not only promotes walking, but also increases the aesthetic appeal of the city.
In a city where cars are the dominant on the streets, it easily becomes a dangerous environment for pedestrians who have to fear for their health and safety. In a neighborhood where people walk more, they tend to create more relations with the people living and working around them. These communities are safer and more beautiful to live in.
Well, Atlanta has been called Sprawlanta. You know, it's the capital of sprawl. Look in the dictionary, it'll say, see Atlanta.
Rectangle, ripping it up, get living it up. Yo, we living it up.
In the late 90s, Chris Lineberger actually referred to Atlanta as the fastest growing human settlement in the history of the planet.
Atlanta is the poster child of suburban sprawl, and it's everywhere. It's as far as the eye can go.
Atlanta's been a classic example of the drive till you qualify, affordable model where the cheap land, the cheap housing is out at the edge.
This is a metro region where only 10% of the population lives in the city proper. 90% lives in the outlying towns and communities.
Extremely long commutes. The average employed Atlantan drives 66 miles a day.
Got a question for you. I put it down with efficiency like things you want places.
There are no natural boundaries to stop Atlanta's growth. There are no mountains, there are no major oceans, and so there's nothing to say that we just won't sprawl to the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, it's like, never mind Charlotte and the rest of those cities in this way.
Atlantans every day drive the distance cumulatively that would take us to the sun and partway back. Every single day. All of those cars burning lots of gasoline generate lots of pollution.
As a matter of fact, in 2009, Forbes magazine rated Atlanta the most toxic city in the country. I'm breathing secondary smoke. No, I'm not talking about cigarettes, I'm talking about cars.
We know more and more that both ozone and particulate matter are major hazards to respiratory and cardiovascular health. But that's not all. We know that being in a car is one of the most dangerous microenvironments we've got. Car crashes are the major cause of death among young people in this country.
It's not just riding in a car that's dangerous. All over Atlanta, you see folks trying to get across 8 lanes of traffic, 1 lane at a time, like some sort of morbid version of the game Frogger.
It takes a lot of strength from within to believe that the angels really got you covered.
3 pedestrians are struck by automobiles every week in Atlanta. 60 people were killed by cars while on foot in 2008. Over 1,000 people were injured. It's more than 1 Atlantan a week who's killed by a car because of the way we built the city. Margaret Mitchell, the author of Gone with the Wind, was killed crossing Peachtree Street, hit by a car.
Several things happened kind of all at once that introduced me to new urbanism, and somebody mentioned this book by Andres Duany or something, you know, they mispronounced his name. So I bought Suburban Nation, read it in a night, and I just got hooked. I mean, what do you have to do to become a developer? You just have to say you are one, and you are one. So we stepped in, held a charrette at the very end of '01. You know, '02 was about permitting, and '03 was about infrastructure, and I think it was '04 when we started finally building the buildings, and here in 2010 it's mainly done.
My name is Kevin Clark. I'm a partner with Historical Concepts. I'm an architect, a lead AP, urban designer. You know, my background here is that I've been living here for about 4.5 years and have been working here for about 3.5. Glenwood Park is so unique. It's right here in town. We're 1.5 miles from the state capitol. Every resident has a place to grab coffee, grab a bite to eat. My 200-foot walk to work is pretty unique, I would say, among Atlantans and probably most folks. Prior to this, I was actually commuting about 35 miles one way to the office. You know, one of the great things is the happenstance occurrences. It's running into my neighbor as he's getting home from work and walking into his condo. And he says, "Hey, do you want to grab a beer later tonight?" Or, "Hey, we're playing trivia at the Mexican restaurant. You want to come and grab an enchilada and have a beer?" Absolutely. If I had lived more of a suburban lifestyle, if I would pass one of my neighbors, the way I would say hi to him is by honking my car. You know, think about the difference of honking your car at somebody versus waving and saying hi, have a conversation with them, and so on and so forth.
To me, the key concept is walkability. And what makes for walkability? Well, one thing is there has to be somewhere to go. So that means compact, and your destinations aren't too far away. It means there's a mix of different elements, a park, recreational facilities, and it's an empirical fact that for a place to be walkable, it has to be interesting and beautiful, and clearly it has to be safe. Safe from crime, and even more importantly, safe from the damn cars. And so getting the whole street geometry thing right becomes incredibly critical.
If you drive down some of the subdivisions that we would associate really with sprawl, you often find snout houses where the garage is really what projects out from the body of the house, and the garage is the most visible thing. It looks like cars live there. You know, back behind the garage, maybe you find the front door to the house. Whereas if you go to places like Glenwood Park or more traditional neighborhoods, you see porches that are not for cars, they're for people.
Garages are in the back. That allows you to keep the trash and the kind of ugliness off the street. And really what it does is it gets you to use your front door a lot more. Here, I probably knew 5 or 6 people within the first day. And I continue to know my neighbors. I know their families, I know their stories, I know their jobs, they know mine.
Great neighborhood, it's very convenient to everything.
It's always somewhere to go and eat, someone to talk to.
I think the actual design is more of a community-based design where you have your retail, your food, and all that stuff like contained within a small area versus suburbia where you have to drive maybe 2-3 miles to get to your favorite restaurant, or the closest restaurant, I should say, maybe not even your favorite.
Neighborhoods like Glenwood incorporate many of the features that we increasingly recognize promote good health. More physical activity, more social interaction, helping to build community, also something that's very good for health. Less driving, which improves air quality. Less driving, which reduces the risk of being in car crashes, and so on. So this is an example of a neighborhood design that incorporates many strategies that really are public health strategies.
I did clock it when I first moved here. I lost 10 pounds in the first 6 months that I lived here. Didn't change my diet, didn't change anything. It was just a different way of living.
There are many things that can be done to make city streets safer for pedestrians. Not only should it be easier for them to cross, but city streets can also be allocated just for the use of pedestrians.
So we must take action to promote pedestrian safety in multiple ways. We've already started implementing some of the 250 recommendations, whether it's a new standard for crosswalks, in-street pedestrian signage, or a pedestrian refuge, or whether it's new bike lanes that actually put the street on a road diet, make it a little thinner. It's easier for a pedestrian to cross the street. We're implementing more of these crosswalks than we thought we would be able to this season, hundreds of them. Leading pedestrian intervals, which you're starting to see pop up, particularly all through the downtown, which give the pedestrian a 3-second jump on the auto traffic, to the pedestrian countdown signals that you now see on all the corners. So it covers the gamut: inexpensive, short-term, medium-term, long-term. We also took this opportunity to look at how we can use our streets in different ways. Now that ranges from redesigning our streets as complete streets for pedestrians, for cyclists, for transit users, with bus lanes, to automobile users. But also, we looked at, like with the Department of Health, how can we create play streets for kids that maybe don't have a park near their home, and if they can shut down the street temporarily on a semi-regular basis, they can use that street for fun and play and feel safe. To open streets, which we partner with the Active Transportation Alliance, for people to get out and see that they can use the streets for active uses, for anything from yoga to running to biking. So we want to take the opportunity that the pedestrian plan gave us and the mayor's initiatives have given us to really open up people's eyes to what streets can be in a city. It's going to take this holistic effort to make the cultural change in Chicago to really zero out pedestrian.
CDOT is making State and Jackson its first all-way pedestrian crossing because more than 41,000 pedestrians cross here on a typical weekday, twice the number of cars that do. The pedestrian scramble is also known as the Barnes Dance, named after traffic engineer Henry Barnes, who started this 70 years ago. Every third light, all cars stop for 35 seconds, allowing pedestrians to cross in all directions, even diagonally, but drivers can no longer turn.
I thought it was weird, but it looks like it's exciting right now. It's the first day. We'll see how it works, and
hopefully it'll work out and be a safer environment.
More than 3,000 pedestrians are hit by cars in the city each year. CDOT's goal is to reduce that number. Cities that do the scramble include Tokyo and Washington, D.C., where an all-way pedestrian crossing is credited with cutting the number of accidents at one intersection, once considered one of the city's most dangerous.
We're going to test.
Crosswalks is one of the ways to ensure less accidents and safer conditions. These efforts are in hopes to create a better environment for people who walk and cross in these areas on a daily basis. We can all agree we look forward to hearing "Walk sign is on for all crossing" at Yonge and Dundas.
The diagonal crosswalk is an operation where we have an exclusive phase for both the pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the street. And as you can see, they have their exclusive pedestrian phase now. And we actually have pedestrian countdown heads, which advises them as to how much time they have left in order to cross the street safely. One of the benefits is by crossing diagonally, you don't have to cross the intersection twice. The second advantage is to separate pedestrians and bicycles from the vehicles and make it a safer intersection. You don't have a situation where you have pedestrians that will interfere with the turning moves, either left turns or right turns, so that helps us from a safety perspective by having the exclusive phase.
It seems to help. It makes it faster to cross, and also it's good that all the cars are stopped, because then you don't have cars whipping around the corner as you're crossing.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
All the pedestrians can go at one time and all the cars are stopped.
By employing safety features such as diagonal crosswalks, competition between cars and pedestrians at intersections lessen, increasing the likelihood that individuals may walk to their destination. By making walking to a place more enjoyable, people are more likely to do so. This can be done by building green parks, investing in unique shops, as well as making mundane actions like simply crossing at an intersection more unique and memorable.
Removing cars is not the only way to get people walking, but the key is creating a great environment that encourages walking. More space and activity is needed to really gain a person's interest in exploration. The Distillery District is a great example because it is a pedestrian-only space and there's a lot of sights to take in.
We talk about rewarding the pedestrian, giving people reasons to go out and walk around their neighborhood. Little design details can really make a difference.
There are a lot of elements of design that really make it pedestrian friendly. So some of the obvious stuff is wide walkways. You see a lot of tree planting, which provides shade in the summer and really makes it more appealing aesthetically, but also functionally. People say, you know, if there are trees between me and the roadway, then I feel safer.
Awnings are great. It's shelter from the rain.
Some of the favorite towns in this country that people love to visit. When they walk down the main street, there are awnings, big windows, sidewalk cafes, there's activity. Those are the things that make those places walkable.
The important design elements include everything from well-painted and marked crosswalks to pedestrian signals, traffic calming to slow traffic to appropriate speeds for neighborhoods and retail districts. Those subtle design elements make it better for the pedestrian. It's got to be safe. I've got to feel like I'm not taking my life in my hands to cross the street.
And showing people what a good walking environment means really empowers them to understand what they can do about it. And many of the components of a walking environment are not so expensive to fix. So you're going into City Hall basically and asking for repainting the crosswalk. That's something that's part of regular maintenance.
The easiest thing that any community can do to start getting more people walking, build excellent sidewalks. And before you know it, you've really started building community along with accommodating people on foot.
It is evident that there has been a significant shift in the last century in city planning to prioritize vehicle use over pedestrian forms of travel. As a result, walking has become much less preferential, both in terms of practicality and convenience for individuals living in the city. It is important, particularly for cities like Toronto with increasingly congested highways, that walking becomes a priority for city representatives and planners as a viable and sustainable method of transportation. For this to happen, city planners must not only reintroduce pedestrian-friendly features on city streets, but must also work to ensure that necessary staples are in close enough proximity that walking represents a feasible method of transportation. This model may also produce auxiliary benefits as more shops, markets, and services may encourage urban exploration by individuals looking to discover their city in a much more organic way than vehicle travel would allow.